Okay, this assessment I'm calling documenting ethics. It's worth 40% of the overall mark. And what I'm really interested in is this whole idea of the making and the watching of documentaries and the questions it raises about the ethics of the filmmakers, the ethics of the social actors, the ethics of us watching it. How do we respond to it? Are we actually being asked to act or behave differently? Is the documentary intrusive? Is it voyeuristic? What happens to the subject once the documentary maker has left? So this assignment, it's asking for both you to respond as a social citizen, an ethical film watcher. How do you respond to the film? And it's also asking you to do some thinking and some research outside of the film and to actually look at the legal and the ethical context and ramifications for this movie and the movie that you'll be picking from the course. I'm really interested how a documentary maker takes advantage of their subjects or avoids taking advantage of the subject and what that actually means. What is the balance between the audience's right to know and the participants' right to privacy, right? What rights does the social actor have in this film, and are they given any rights of privacy? So these are the sorts of questions that I'm asking you to explore and unpack in this assignment. So what you need to do is you need to choose one film from the film screened in the course. My advice is to think of the early films that we're seeing in the course. And I am only saying that because they're films that we would have watched together. They'd be films that we have discussed together, and they're probably films that will be fresher in your mind than having to pick up a film that you may not have seen for a long time or have never seen. So it might just be in your best interest to pick an early film. So what you have to do is you have to pick one film from the film screened in the course, and you need to discuss its relationship of the filmmaker to the participant, the social actors. And in doing this, you should consider who owns the image, the material, the footage, the participant or the filmmaker. Now, you can refer to other films in your analysis if you like. It doesn't just have to be, exclusively on the film. So if you're running on To Heaven to Hold, where the social actor wasn't given any, um, you know, any sort of profit or percentage from the film apart from a base payment, and that person, that social actor, watched the filmmakers profit very, very well from this movie, as opposed to something like Hoop Dreams, where the social actors were actually made producers of the film and they were actually given a cut of the film. So for the success that that film had, Hoop Dreams, the social actors also profited nicely from that. So if you're talking about To Heaven to Hold, you might want to actually directly reference Hoop Dreams, which would be absolutely fine. So in discussing your film of choice, you need to consider what choices the filmmaker used in constructing the film. So what modes of documentary are at work in this film? So the observational, reflexive. There'll be a lecture and a reading on the different modes come also on Blackboard. So don't worry too much about that. More than merely stating a number of modes, what different modes, you need to make an argument for why the filmmaker chose these particular modes over others. What impact do they have on the social actors and stories it constructed? How would the film have significantly changed if different modes had been used? So I want you to think about, how was this documentary constructed? Why was it constructed like this? Does the documentary filmmaker interview the subjects? Does the documentary filmmaker appear on screen? So these are the sorts of questions I really want you to unpack. Another important aspect to consider is where and what the subject is in relation to the film, right? So what's the subject in relation to the film? Where were they directly involved in the making of the film? How involved were they? Like if it's a film that's actually looking at old footage and the subject for some reason doesn't appear, right? That's very different to say actually looking at a film like To Have Been Told, where you're actually asking the a particular person to be involved, and you cannot make the film without them. Yeah, there's an interesting story in Hoop Dreams when one of the social actors, the power went off at his house, and they couldn't film in the house. So the filmmakers actually paid to get the power switched back on in the house. So they become directly involved in the life of the social actors more than anything. Did the social actors agree to the interviews? How do they interview? Is there a lot of interviews? These are the sorts of questions I want you to think about. Also, if the social actors are dead, the ones being portrayed, that also directly impacts how the film can be made. Like Margot Nash making The Silencers and wanting to make a film about her mother, but waiting until her mother had died until she actually did that. So these are some questions to consider. How does the documentary attempt to persuade you to think differently about the event, place, person? What is the context in which the documentary is being interpreted? What will be the effect on audiences if they are persuaded by the documentary's argument? And what is the argument of the documentary? Who is behind the documentary? Who is the subject? Who is the event? What is the event? Is it an event or is it a subject? And for this final question, who is behind the documentary, you do need to do some background research on the filmmaker and the subject to offer do they offer a particular expectation? If it's a Nick Broomfield movie where he becomes very involved in his social actors and very involved in his subject, and there's always a very strong argument that he's trying to make, often a very left-wing social argument, you expect a certain type of film from him. And here are just some of here are the assessment criteria for this task. So it's really just your ability to recognise and analyse some of the basic elements that's on the screen, your ability to analyse and read in detail passages of specifically documentary films, and your ability to analyse the meanings and implications of the artistic choices and aesthetic decisions that the documentary filmmaker made in the creation of this film. Okay, so it's a pretty straightforward film. It's really just picking a film and really unpacking it, thinking about the sort of the social, ethical ramifications of it. And I'm interested in both your responses as a social citizen and your sort of unpacking and trying to get a sense of why the film was constructed in the way it was to create an argument around ideas of ethics. Okay, I'll leave it there. See you soon.